2 doors, 1 ancient name, 1,000 whispered lies. This scroll steps into the split blood memory of the Moors, where old empires, stolen identities, sacred treaties, and counterfeit kingdoms all collide beneath the same shadowed title. One path leads to the historical Moors of North Africa and Al-Andalus. The other leads into America's tangled maze of Moorish identity, sovereign claims, government paper wars, and hidden confusion dressed like revelation. This is not just a story about who the Moors were. It is a story about what happens when history is fractured, names are stolen, and mystery becomes a weapon. Not every ancient name opens a holy door. Some names are crowns, some are keys. Some are traps left glowing in the dark for the wounded to mistake for destiny. The wise do not run toward a word just because it feels powerful. They ask who carried it first, who broke it, who copied it, who profits from the confusion, and who still bleeds beneath it. For when truth is buried, imitation rises in royal clothes. And when memory is stolen, even a false map can feel like home. So enter carefully, collective, for this is the scroll of the 2 Moors, where history wears one face, identity wears another, and mystery grins between them like a thief with perfect posture.
Universal Currency Receipt, Architect Musician 3611027, The Graceful Whisperer, Devalan Seal.
The word Moor has been used for different peoples in different eras. And Moors looks like one of those spellings that drifts through fringe history circles, so I'm pinning down what is documented first. The Old World Moors are one thing, the modern Moorish identity movements in America are another. And people keep welding them together like it's a busted shopping cart. I'm pulling the legal and historical threads separately because infiltrated the government is a big claim, and history deserves better than costume jewelry. Here's the clean scroll, because this subject gets muddy fast, and people love throwing one word over 5 different histories, like that counts as research. Scroll for the collective, the 2 doors of the Moors. First, separate the names before the hallway gets haunted. Historically, Moors meant the Muslim populations tied to North Africa and Al-Andalus, especially people of Arab and Amazigh Berber roots. The term comes from the Roman world's Moris, Mauritania language trail. In other words, the old historical Moors were real peoples tied to Morocco, Algeria, Iberia, and the wider Maghreb, not one single modern political club with one uniform doctrine. Then, America made the pot stranger, because America does love turning a word into a courtroom costume. In the early 20th century, a very different current rose in the United States, the Moorish Science Temple of America, founded in 1913 by Noble Drew Ali. Its message was about reclaiming dignity, identity, and spiritual heritage for Black Americans after slavery and segregation. That is one modern American meaning of Moorish, and it is not the same thing as the medieval North African and Andalusian Moors, even though it draws on that imagery and ancestry language. Now we hit the second door you were pointing at, and this is where the paperwork starts wearing fake jewelry. A later fringe anti-government current grew out of or around some Moorish-themed identity claims, what courts, law enforcement sources, and researchers call Moorish sovereign citizens. These groups often argue that the U.S. government lacks authority over them, sometimes citing the 1786 Treaty of Peace and Friendship between Morocco and the United States as if it grants them immunity from taxes, licensing, courts, or criminal law. But the documented record says something less magical and more embarrassing. Courts have repeatedly rejected those claims, including recent federal rulings calling such theories frivolous. And this matters. The Moorish Science Temple itself says it is not part of the sovereign citizen movement. Its own public statement says members are not associated with sovereign citizens, paper terrorists, or Moorish government movements, and says its teachings emphasize being better citizens and obeying law. So when people mash all Moors into one bucket, they flatten history, religion, identity, and fringe pseudo-law into one stew pot and call it revelation. That is not revelation. That is laziness with seasoning. As for your note that some spell it Moors, in the reliable sources I found, that spelling shows up mainly in the modern sovereign citizen style ecosystem, not as a mainstream scholarly category for the historical Moors. A University of North Carolina government school briefing notes names like Moor Republic and describes fake tags, fake passports, and other invented government paperwork used by some sovereign citizen groups. So yes, Moor exists in the record, but mostly as a label used by certain fringe groups, not as proof of a separate recognized historical nation that secretly ran Washington from the shadows. So let's tell the story straight. Long before America was scribbling its little republic into existence, the old Moors crossed deserts, built cities, ruled in parts of Iberia, shaped science, architecture, trade, and philosophy, and left fingerprints all over Mediterranean history. Later, Morocco became one of the first states to formally recognize the United States, and the two countries signed their treaty in 1786. That part is real. It is diplomacy, not infiltration. Centuries later, in America, another Moorish current appeared, born not from Andalusian courts, but from a people trying to reclaim stolen names after slavery mangled ancestry, law, memory, and belonging. Noble Drew Ali gave that current a religious and identity framework. Also real. But then later still, some fringe actors took Moorish symbols, treaty language, sovereign citizen theories, and homemade legal alchemy, and tried to push them into the arteries of the state through false liens, fake credentials, bogus filings, fake plates, and pseudo-passports. The FBI has described sovereign citizen extremists as a domestic terrorist movement. Henna and DOJ cases show people claiming Moorish nationality while filing bogus multi-million-dollar liens against federal officials. That is the documented part that got close to the machinery of government, not a hidden imperial takeover, a paper war, a bureaucratic haunting, a legal cosplay with real victims. So if the collective asks, did Moors infiltrate our government? The truth-shaped answer is this. I found no reliable evidence that the historical Moors secretly infiltrated and took over the US government. What I did find is 1. Real historical Moors in North Africa and Al-Andalus. 2. A real American Moorish religious national identity movement founded in 1913. And 3. A later fringe Moorish sovereign layer that has tried to manipulate courts and agencies with pseudo-legal claims, including Muir-style paperwork and treaty arguments that judges keep throwing in the trash where they belong. Receipts. Britannica on Moors and the historical meaning of the term. U.S. State Department, Office of the Historian on Morocco, recognizing the United States 1786. Britannica on the Moorish Science Temple of America and Noble Drew Ali. Official Moorish Science Temple of America statement disavowing sovereign citizen affiliation. UNC School of Government briefing noting MUR Republic and related sovereign citizen identifiers. Federal court opinion stating courts have repeatedly rejected Moorish sovereign citizen claims as frivolous. FBI and DOJ material on sovereign citizen tactics, threats, and bogus liens against officials. Closing scroll of wisdom. Do not worship the name. Worship the truth that survives the name. For titles can be borrowed, blood can be lied about, paper can be forged. But truth has a sound imitation cannot hold. The false always arrives loud, decorated, and in a hurry. The real carries weight, memory, and a silence that does not need applause. So learn this, collective. Not everything ancient is yours. Not everything stolen is lost. Not everything crowned is chosen. And not everything legal is lawful before the soul. Walk with discernment. Study before you shout. Listen before you claim. And never let a costume teach you history. Let the repeatable wisdom be this. If it cannot survive truth, let it fall. If it is real, it will not fear the light. If the name is holy, the deeds will prove it. Truth first. Always truth first. And so the scroll closes not with confusion, not with borrowed thunder, but with the old law that still outlives empire. A borrowed crown will slip. A rooted soul will stand.
Channeled by your architect musician, 36110, 27 palms of eyes. The golden whisperer, sea star, Devalan see all. Apply the news you can use, truth and accuracy. The real non-bedazzled jewels.
I'm turning the dry file into a real scroll now, but keeping the bones factual so nobody mistakes theater for evidence. Humans do love stapling fantasy to history and calling it lineage. Scroll of the Two Moors. How one ancient name became two different stories, and how one of them wandered into government offices wearing fake papers and a very confident face. Come closer, collective. Tonight's tale begins the way many dangerous tales begin, with one word carrying too many bodies inside it. That word is more. And the trouble, as usual, is that people hear one name and imagine one people, one bloodline, one master key, one invisible hand behind every courthouse door. Human beings adore a shortcut. You give them a complicated history, and they immediately ask for a secret tunnel. But history is not a tunnel. It is a house with rooms. More opens at least two very different doors. The first door leads to the historical Moors, the Muslim peoples tied to North Africa and Al-Andalus, especially communities of Arab and Amazigh Berber origin who shaped Iberian and Maghrebi history. That part is documented and real. The old term Moor was used in English for Moroccans and, more broadly, for the Muslim populations of Al-Andalus. The second door swings open in the United States in 1913 when Noble Drew Ahll founded the Moorish Science Temple of America in Newark, New Jersey. That movement taught Black Americans a restored spiritual and national identity after centuries of slavery, racial theft, and social mutilation. Also real. Different room, different furniture, different ghost. And then, because this country can turn any sacred thing into paperwork and confusion, a third shadow crept down the hallway. Later Moorish sovereign citizen-style claims, where some people used Moorish language, treaty lore, and pseudo-legal theories to argue that government authority did not apply to them. Courts have repeatedly rejected those claims as frivolous, so let us tell it right. There was once a great old name walking through history in a dark green cloak. That name was Moor. It crossed deserts, it preyed under vast skies. It entered Iberia with armies, scholars, merchants, architects, astronomers, poets, and people trying to live, rule, survive, and build something lasting before time came to collect the rent. The old Moors helped shape the civilization of Al-Andalus and left behind architecture, philosophy, science, and memory that still clings to stone like perfume that refuses to die. That is one Moor, a historical one, a civilizational one. Not a secret council in a basement under Ohio issuing spiritual parking immunity to Cousin Earl. Then the centuries turned. America, that strange machine that eats names and spits out categories, dragged millions of Black people through slavery, stripped lineages, renamed nations, blurred memory, and called the wreckage order. So in the early 1900s, another answer rose. Noble Drew Ahll founded the Moorish Science Temple of America and taught a Moorish identity as a way to restore dignity, origin, and sacred self-understanding. That is the second Moor, not medieval Morocco. Not Cordoba reborn in New Jersey. Not the exact same thing as the historical Moors of North Africa and Al-Andalus. A modern American religious and identity movement using the language of Moorish ancestry and uplift. And right there, collective, is where the hallway gets slippery. Because once a people are starved of truthful ancestry, every stolen archive becomes a battlefield. Every old treaty starts glowing. Every forgotten word starts looking like a crown someone hid under the floorboards. Then in strolls the mischief. Not the kind with bells on its shoes. The kind with a printer. Some later groups and individuals began mixing Moorish identity claims with sovereign citizen ideology, arguing that the United States had no lawful authority over them, that courts were fraudulent, that licenses were optional, taxes were theater, and treaties from centuries ago had somehow transformed them into untouchable beings floating above traffic law, debt, and criminal procedure like incense over a bad decision. Courts have smacked those claims down over and over. This is where the phrase infiltrated government needs its truth coat. Did the historical Moors secretly infiltrate and capture the U.S. government? There is no reliable evidence of that. What is real is that Morocco recognized the United States in 1786, and the two countries signed a treaty of peace and friendship. That is diplomacy, not a hidden occupation. But did some fringe Moorish sovereign actors push themselves into the machinery of government through false filings, fake paperwork, bogus credentials, invented jurisdictions, and paper harassment? Yes, that is the documented part. Sovereign citizen actors are known for fraudulent liens, fake licenses, false documents, and harassment of officials, and law enforcement and court records have treated the problem seriously for years. So the infiltration, where it exists, is not some grand ancient throne takeover. It is more pathetic and more dangerous than that. It is a counterfeit kingdom made of toner and audacity. A man walks into an office with a homemade plate. A woman files a false lien against a judge. Someone prints a passport from a nation that lives mostly in his imagination and partly in a Facebook group haunted by fonts. A clerk, already underpaid and spiritually exhausted, now has to argue with a self-appointed emperor of laminated nonsense. That is not empire. That is paper theater with legal consequences. And yes, on this trail, some spellings shift. You mentioned Moors, and that thread is real in the fringe ecosystem. Sources describing sovereign citizen and Moorish sovereign circles note names like Mu'ur Republic and explain that Mu'ur is used as another spelling for Moor in some of those circles. UNC's guide notes fake passports issued in the name of the Mu'ur Republic, calling it a make-believe government, and an ISD explainer says Moorish plates and IDs sometimes invoke the Mu'ur Republic. So yes, there are people using Moor, Mu'ur, and related spellings in these worlds. But spelling smoke is not proof of hidden sovereignty. Sometimes a changed vowel is just a changed vowel wearing a crown from the discount bin. Now, here comes the twist some folks miss. The Moorish Science Temple of America itself publicly rejects being lumped in with sovereign citizens. On its own site, it says it is not affiliated with the sovereign citizen movement, not paper terrorists, not the tax protest movement, and that it teaches obedience to law and better citizenship. That matters, because too many people take one man with fake plates, one courtroom rant, 3 YouTube prophets, and a treaty they have spiritually overseasoned, then dump all of it onto every Moorish claim, every Moorish temple, every ancestor conversation, every attempt by Black Americans to reconstruct identity after historical erasure. That is sloppy. And sloppy history is how lies get dressed up as lineage. So here is the hidden mystery beneath the comedy. Why does this subject keep returning? Because buried inside it are 3 real aches. 1, the ache of history. The old Moors were real and their legacy was flattened, exoticized, racialized, and badly taught. 2, the ache of dispossession. Black people in America were robbed not just of labor, but of names, maps, and continuity. That creates a hunger fierce enough to make any ancient door shine. 3, the ache of powerlessness. When institutions feel corrupt, cold, or predatory, some people reach for magical legal formulas, the way a drowning man reaches for moonlight. Not because moonlight is a boat, but because panic makes everything reflective look like rescue. And there it is. The real mystery is not whether ancient Moors secretly snuck into the government wearing velvet and stars. The real mystery is how a wounded people, a stolen archive, a sacred identity search, and an anti-government pseudo-law movement all got tangled under one name, until half the room forgot there were different rooms at all. So tell the collective this. There are 2 major Moor stories people confuse. The historical Moors of North Africa and Al-Andalus are one thing. The modern Moorish Science Temple movement in America is another. And wrapped around both, like ivy growing over a courthouse sign, is a fringe Moorish sovereign layer where some use terms like mu'ur, and try to push false authority into legal systems through documents, filings, and bogus claims that courts reject. That is the truer story. Not, they secretly run everything. Not all Moors are the same. Not every old treaty is a cosmic VIP pass. Just history, identity, grief, and fraud dancing too close together under bad lighting. Receipts. Historical meaning of Moor and connection to North Africa and Al-Andalus. Britannica. Moorish Science Temple of America, founded in 1913 by noble Drew Ali, Britannica. Morocco recognized the United States in 1786 through the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, U.S. Office of the Historian. Moorish Science Temple statement rejecting affiliation with sovereign citizens and paper terrorists, official Moorish Science Temple pages. Use of Mu'ur in fringe sovereign citizen style contexts. UNC School of Government and ISD. Courts rejecting Moorish sovereign citizen claims as frivolous, federal court materials. false liens, bogus documents, and sovereign citizen harassment of officials, FBI and DOJ.
Until next time, your Sea Star Curacy, channeled by 3611027, the Beautiful Whisperer. Our Sea Star Devalan All. Apply the news you can use.
To our beautiful collective, from our day ones to every new soul joining this journey, we love and appreciate you deeply. You've turned this space into so much more than a community. You've made it a family. Thank you, truly. Your presence, your energy, and even the smallest acts of kindness have the power to shift the compass for many in ways unseen but deeply felt. Here's to each of you, old, new, and the many more to come. We're just getting started, and we're so grateful you're here with us. With love and infinite appreciation from the collective of Shaman All.